since birth. Yes, I know my worth. Go hard, put in the work, cause I come first, and I ain't even need your help. I put the work in. Put the work in. Put the work in. You gotta do it for yourself. Put the work in. I heard you looking for results.
Welcome back, everyone, to another tournament recap presented by MidwayUSA. This week we are going to talk about the St. Johns River, the first Bassmaster Elite Series event of the season for 2022, and ended up having a pretty good event there. Came out of it with a top 20 finish. The St. Johns has treated me well the last few years. I've got a 14th, a 14th, and a 20th now, 3 years in a row. I can't seem to break into that day 4 cut, but had some really good events there, and I've kind of fished a lot of the same types of baits, but I've done it in different areas. And really the biggest key for me the last 3 years, and the bait that has kind of carried me through those a lot, has been this one right here. This is a 5-inch X-Zone True Center stick, just fishing it in black. I've got a little VMC large bobber stop up here and a 1/4 ounce tungsten weight, and rigged up with a 5/0 VMC heavy duty wide gap hook, or extra wide gap hook, and got that paired up on 22-pound Seagar Tatsu this year. That's a brand new size for them, and I've been putting it to the test and using it a bunch. But it's a really good in-between size for when you're flipping with those lighter weights, but still fishing around heavy cover and big fish. It's very supple. It's light enough that it doesn't pull that light weight away from the cover, but it's still heavy enough that you don't worry about getting those big fish out of that heavy cover. And then spooling that up on the Daiwa Tatula PF, Elite PF, that stands for pitch and flip. Love this reel for pitching and flipping. It has a specifically designed braking system that keeps your bait trajectory lower to the water, so you get a more accurate and a quieter presentation. And it also comes with this larger handle and knobs so that you get the power even with an 8-to-1. So it's pretty much the benefits, best of both worlds. Got that paired up with the Alpha Angler Hitter 7.6 heavy action rod, light enough tip that we can control that bait. Really used that one a lot, just pitching to isolated targets and places where I felt like fish were spawning, but I couldn't actually see those fish. And then on day 3, or actually, excuse me, day 2, things weren't really coming together for me on my offshore stuff, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But we had a lot of crazy weather conditions, right? We had really cold, rainy, nasty start to practice, and then we had this gradual warming trend that came through, and what it did is it really got those fish grouped up, and then as it started to warm up, it spread them out, and they started going to the bank. And day 2, I ended up going back into a springs, got into some cleaner water. It was really the only clean water I could find, and was able to find a couple big ones on beds that had just moved up, were willing to buy it. I caught a 4-pounder and a 5-pounder that really didn't take me that long to fish for, and I caught them on the True Center stick, just pitching that around. And then the other bait that I threw quite a bit toward the end of the event, as it started to warm up, we got that warming trend, was the Rapala X Prop in good old Florida gold color. And this is just a staple down there. It kind of imitates those needlefish that a lot of those bigger bass like to eat. Day 2, it's kind of what got me some of those earlier bites and allowed me to go have the confidence to fish for those sight fish, because I already had a decent limit at that point. And I spool it up on a 40-pound braid. This is actually old Seagar 40-pound braid that I've got. And then I pair it up with a 20-pound Seagar InvizX fluorocarbon leader, so that you've got a little bit of stiffness to keep that braid away from those blades. And that InvizX just a little bit stiffer than the Tatsu, and does a good job of keeping that you know, that prop nice and free and allowing that bait to still work straight. I upgrade the trebles to VMCs, and those are 75/48s, so they're the short shanks, and then I add a little feathered treble on the back, and throwing that on the Alpha Angler top hammer, which is a 7-foot medium, and the Daiwa Steez A in 7.1:1. It's kind of my go-to workhorse reel. And I was fishing this one right on those reed edges, places where those fish were pulling up. They weren't quite spawning yet, but they were moving around, especially early in the day when they weren't really set up on those isolated targets. They were kind of roaming. It allowed me to cover a lot of water and kind of actually get a gauge on how aggressive those fish were going to be on that particular day. If I got more bites on that in the morning, I felt like more fish were moving shallow. The less bites I got on it, the more I felt like they were either locking down on beds, not wanting to come to the surface, or those fish had pulled off to the offshore stuff, which then came into play a suspending jerkbait, which I threw on 10-pound Seagar Tatsu, super limp, supple line. That's what I caught a lot of my big fish on, and throwing it on the Daiwa Tatula TW SV 70 size. So this is a smaller reel for our, you know, our baits that we like to create a lot of motion, and it helps with more bait control, less fatigue. Throwing that on the Alpha Angler Slasher, so that is my go-to jerkbait rod. It's a 610 medium action, pretty light tip, has a good backbone into it, but not too much to rip those treble hooks out. And I was fishing that on little break lines, places where those fish were staged up, and anywhere there'd be a little turn, maybe just a little bit of a harder bottom piece. There could be a little stump down there, just something for those fish to hold on before they move to the bank. And I kind of just stuck it out in one area. I felt like there were a lot of big fish in there. You know, some of the guys made top 10s. There were a lot of checks that got cut out of there, and just kind of stuck it out in there and ended up with a good event. And that was kind of my 3-prong approach to that week. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do going into it, but kept an open mind, was able to make some adjustments and adapt as the event went on, and come out of there with a good top 20 finish. And then on to Harris Chain next.
Say, hey, I've been on the wave. It's a party, make a toast. It's a party every day.